Have you ever had a moment that made your skin crawl? A shadow where there shouldn't be one? A whisper in an empty room, or something you simply can't explain? If so, we want to hear from you. Here at the Haunted UK podcast, we're always on the lookout for spine-tingling stories to feature in our end-of-season listener episodes and our short haunt series. Whether it's a chilling encounter, a mysterious experience, or something that's haunted you for years, we want your tale. Send your story to contact us at hauntedukpodcast.com. And don't forget to follow us on social media. Facebook, X at Haunted UK Pod, TikTok and Instagram at Haunted UK Podcast, or visit our website www.hauntedukpodcast.com. Now, if you love what we do and want even more haunted goodies, then you can support the show on Patreon and Ko-fi. We've got 2 brilliant tiers, Possessed and Spooked, both packed with bonus content, exclusive episodes, and extra material that'll keep you up all night. But that's not all. We've launched a brand new sister podcast, Haunted UK Fiction, and we're calling all storytellers. Whether you're a published author, an aspiring writer, or someone with a natural gift for spinning eerie tales, we're looking for original fictional short stories and novellas with strong paranormal or supernatural themes. Think suspenseful, mysterious, atmospheric, terrifying, thought-provoking, even darkly magical. If your story is selected, we'll professionally narrate, record, mix and master it into an audiobook-style format, then feature it on the show. You'll get a copy of the finished production to use however you like, and you'll retain full ownership of your work. Submit your story to hauntedukfiction@hotmail.com and follow us on Instagram at hauntedukfiction. So whether it's truth or fiction, if it's haunted, we want it. Now, sit back and enjoy the episode. This is the Haunted UK Podcast's Short Haunts. Welcome, dear listeners, to our series of short haunts, a shot of scary just for you. So grab a hot chocolate, maybe a tea, or maybe something stronger, because this is Haunted UK Podcast's Short Haunts, the ghosts of Sarah and Gladys. Tales from those in the emergency services have always struck a chord with me. These people regularly witness incidents which many of us would find difficult to cope with, and whilst they continue to do their jobs under varying environments of pressure, many are exposed to situations which challenge even their beliefs. The following short haunt was sent in by Jon Williams, whose career has included military service, police service, and even being part of the team who went to Thailand after the 2004 tsunami. A person like Jon has pretty much seen it all. And even though he admits to having witnessed a number of strange incidents, Jon doesn't believe in ghosts. The subjects of the supernatural and paranormal have fascinated Jon for years, but he chooses to look for the rational, the explainable, the logical, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that at all. Skeptic Kieran O'Keefe often says that there are literally hundreds, sometimes even thousands of possibilities to investigate before we should even consider calling something a ghost or a haunting. So how can Jon have these experiences and still refuse to even entertain the prospect of a paranormal realm, where all of these strange and counter-scientific phenomena seem to, allegedly, exist. Who knows for sure? But this is only the first of 2 short haunts from Jon. The second will appear at some time in the future, and it's just as fascinating as this one. So let's hand this episode over to Jon, as he describes 2 of his past working environments, which may have had spirits, called Sarah and Gladys, who haunted them. Hi Steve, I really enjoy the show. It's so refreshing to have a podcast that isn't trying to be over the top and delivers its topics in a measured and relaxed way. I'm a recently retired police officer, and I served the entirety of my services in the Gwent Police in southeast Wales. Prior to joining, I had a military career including postings to conflict zones. My policing career was also a bit different from most, as the majority of my service was in specialist roles, specifically in the Armed Response Unit and then the Road Policing Unit. Additionally, I was also a member of the Disaster Victim Identification Team and was posted to Thailand following the tsunami in 2004. I'm giving this potted history only to show that it's fair to say that I've seen more of my share of death from disaster victims, road traffic deaths, suicides, murders, infant deaths and the more routine, although no less tragic, sudden deaths. These have included people who die in hospital, at home, to the ones who lie undiscovered for weeks or months before they are missed or discovered. A colleague and I once attempted to calculate how many dead people I'd seen in my life, and the figure was in the high hundreds. The reason for this background is to illustrate that I'm no stranger to death, the dead, and situations that to some would be stressful or unnerving. This is also the point where I tell you that I do not believe in ghosts whatsoever. I have always had a keen interest in the supernatural since my childhood, but this has more to do with the psychology of belief than any acceptance of ghosts. I firmly believe that the vast majority of sightings and experiences can be quite easily explained, and those that can't are because of completely natural phenomena that simply hasn't been determined yet. But, and of course there has to be a but, there are always the very rare stories that to my mind don't readily fall into either of these categories, and are the little gems that keep most of us skeptics interested. And it's a few of these that I'd like to share with you, that I've either experienced or witnessed personally. I'm happy for you to use my name, and I will give the locations of the incidents, as to anonymize them would be unnecessary. I will, however, change any names, as they could bring undue embarrassment to individuals. The first experiences are simple enough and are more curious than anything else. One of my first stations in the 1990s was in a small market town on the border between Wales and England, called Chepstow. It's a lovely little town, full of history dating back to prehistoric settlements. The police station was at the top of the older part of the town, near to the old town gate on Moore Street. The station itself was built in 1912 on a site of a pub called the Mitre, which apparently dated back to 1647. When I was stationed in Chepstow, the locker room and dog yard, which was fully enclosed but open to the sky, square in the centre of the station, still had the old flagstones from the pub. When major refurbishment work took place in the early 2000s, numerous coins and artefacts were found dating back to the pub's days when the flagstones were replaced. My shift of about 6 and a sergeant was composed predominantly of other ex-military personnel, although from different services, etc. We were all in our 30s and 40s, so reasonably mature and life experienced, and I would never have described any of them as nervy or fanciful. Our station was one of the ones furthest away from any assistance if things went sideways, and was the nearest town to a military training barracks which often saw, in the days when pubs were the epicentre of the weekends, many violent incidents. So the station was generally staffed by, politely put, those more comfortable and able to deal with potentially volatile situations. This was in the days before body armour, pepper spray and tasers. You were on foot patrol at night with your handcuffs and trusty baton, and usually on your own. One of my colleagues, Ben, was very much a no-nonsense ex-squaddie. One night shift, we were crewed up and had returned to the station at around 2 a.m. for some food and to do the dreaded night report. The computers were the old green lettering on black background type back then, and it was the night shift's duty to type up all of the station's arrests, activities, and any sundry information to HQ via a report that had to be laboriously typed up and sent via telex. Unfortunately, I'd lost the toss, so after eating, I went to do the report while Ben made a brew in the kitchen. It's important to give a little description of the layout of the station here. When it was built, it was originally composed of a courthouse at the rear, and the station itself was divided into the actual police station and a residence for the incumbent inspector. This, however, was changed in the 1950s, and the residential area became part of the station itself. As such, there was a very obvious divide between the two areas, albeit now opened up with an archway on the ground floor and a corridor on the first floor with 2 staircases. Although there was a front door facing onto Moore Street, the car park was at the rear, and the offices would access the station through a security-coded rear door into a stone corridor of about 15 metres. This corridor passed a storeroom door to the right, where the emergency generator and various archaic bits of kit were stored, and at that time, the window into the kitchen area, which was a tiny little room around 3 metres square. The corridor would then turn 90 degrees to the right and pass the kitchen door, which was always open, before it took a left turn going on into the station itself. There was also an opening to the left, into the enclosed dog yard. The access door from the car park was huge, metal, and on the kind of self-closing mechanism that required a bloody good yank to open and would close with a resounding clang as you let it go, which reverberated around the entire station. It also had a sensor that rang a bell in the front desk office when the door opened. I'd sat in the front desk area and was grumblingly writing out the night report. I'd been there for about 15 minutes, wondering where Ben was with my brew, when suddenly he shot into the room and said, "Have you seen a woman come in here?" He looked a bit wide-eyed and agitated, very un-Ben-like, so I turned and said, "No, why?" He shot back out of the room, and I, thinking something was definitely up, raced after him. Between the room I had been in and the kitchen was a small hallway with the old stairs to the first floor to my left and 2 more rooms, the sergeant's office and the briefing room before the corridor itself. Ben had shot up the stairs but came back down 30 seconds later, looking bemused. He told me that he'd been sitting at the kitchen table waiting for the tea to brew in the pot. We only made proper old-school army tea in this station. He was watching the news on the old 14-inch TV that was on the shelf in the corner. Where he was sitting was immediately next to the window into the corridor. It's worth noting that the bright bulkhead lights in the corridor and dog yard were all on, as were the lights in the hallway and front desk area where I was. He said that movement caught his eye, and he looked out of the window to see a woman in a Victorian dress walk past the window. Obviously startled, he jumped up and ran out of the kitchen door to the corridor. This was no more than 1 to 2 meters from where he was sitting. Anyone passing would have been either immediately in front of the door, if they'd had continued walking in the direction he saw them, or easily visible along the corridor or in the dog yard. Ben said that the woman had simply vanished, and after quickly checking the storeroom door, which was locked, he had run into where I was. We checked the building and found nothing, and the other doors that would lead outside were both locked, so anyone entering or leaving would only be able to do so through the rear security door. There was always a story that during the period that the station was also a residence, the wife of the incumbent inspector hanged herself from the stairs in the area by the briefing room. I never found any evidence to support this tale though. Her name was supposedly Sarah. Staying in Chepstow Station, one night shift I was single crewed and returned to the station for some food at around 3 a.m. As I walked into the hallway at the bottom of the stairs, thinking that one of the other crew members may be in, I called out the usual "hello". I then heard a woman's voice clearly answer "hello" in return, sounding like it was coming from upstairs. The only female officer on duty from the station that night was Alison, so I called back up the stairs using her name, saying I was having my food break and did she want a cup of tea. When I had no reply, I went upstairs and found no one there. However, this was in summertime, and the windows on the landing area, it was a return-style staircase, were open, so perhaps someone passing heard me calling out, called back instinctively, and I heard that voice coming through the window and mistook it for someone else inside the building. My last experience in Chepstow was similarly perplexing. Like most cops, my day-to-day was dominated by paperwork. In the 90s, everything was hard copy, and statements etc. were all handwritten. As such, most of us carried our most used paperwork in A4-sized folio cases in our duty bags to have on hand. Mine was a black leather-look one with my collar number professionally Tipp-X'd on the front to distinguish it and discourage someone borrowing it. Of course, this didn't work, and it would often go missing for a shift or two before someone realized they needed to return it, and it would turn up in my tray. However, on one occasion, it had been AWOL for a few weeks, and I was fed up with using other things to carry my paperwork around in. I decided to buy a new one on my rest days after the last night shift I was on. Again at around 2 to 3 a.m, I returned to the station with my shift partner Jim, ex-tank regiment, so pretty much a bomb-proof character. He'd drawn the short straw for the night report that night, so after food, he shuffled off to the front desk room, where he bashed and swore his way through the report, and I went to the briefing room to sort out my paperwork. At the time, your sergeant would allocate you crime complaints to investigate. Basically, any reported crime was handwritten onto A4 documents, booked out to you, and your investigation progress was recorded on them. At the end of each shift rotation, it was necessary to go through your allocation to see which ones warranted more work, which were detected, and which ones were to be filed as undetected. Then we deposit them into the sergeant's in-tray. Most officers did this by laying out all these sheets on the briefing room table and then going through them to update them and sort for filing. This was what I was doing tonight. I'd laid out probably about 20 sheets on the briefing room table, but before I got my teeth into it, I decided to use the toilet. After I'd finished and got back to the table, lying in the middle of my paperwork was my missing folio. While we were the only on shift in Chepstow that night, there was a crew in the next town over, and I figured that one of them had called in and dropped off the folio. I made a brew and took one into Jim. I mentioned the other team calling in, and he said that no one had been in. In fact, the other crew had one person in custody and had been in Newport's Central Police Station for the last hour. I asked him if anyone else had been in, and he said definitely not, as he would have heard the door. I told him about the folio turning up, and he just shrugged his shoulders and said, "Sarah." Moving north now within the county, to Monmouth Police Station on Glendower Street. This building is around 100 years older than Chepstow and became a police station in 1895. It's a large 3-story building with lots of corridors and staircases, and allegedly a ghost called Gladys. There are no details of who Gladys may be, but she's often spoken about. I've never seen her, but on some of the occasions I've been on my own in Monmouth Station at night, there's often quite significant noises which start up. These happen at different times and with different sounds. Because of the age of the building, it's likely to make profound creaks and groans as it settles in the night, but they do often sound as if someone is either walking around on the upper floor or as if a broom is being used. The sounds are generally loud, as if someone is deliberately crashing about, and I must admit that on a couple of occasions I have shouted out, "Gladys, for God's sake, keep it down," or something similar, whereupon the noises invariably stop straight away. And that is where we bring this short haunt to a close, but needing to ask the obvious questions. Who were Sarah and Gladys? Was Sarah the woman who'd hung herself? Or was it the spirit of someone else? Or something else? Many of Jon's colleagues at that station seemed to firmly believe that there was something off with that building, and those same people probably had many stories to tell. Without any further backstory about the police station in Monmouth, it's almost impossible to guess the identity of Gladys. As Jon mentioned, the building goes back a long time, so anything could have happened there. Although Jon seemed to lean towards a rational explanation as far as the voice was concerned, it's a little more difficult to explain what happened to the folio folder, but that doesn't mean it was supernatural or paranormal, does it? Maybe you've already made up your mind, or maybe you haven't. But if you have a similar experience to Jon's, then maybe you should write into the show, because the next story to be the subject of a short haunt could be yours.